Welcome to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name's Nick Ponte. I'm here with Stephen Clark. You all right?
Good, Nick. How are you?
Yeah, all good, man. All good. You've got a lot on your plate at the moment, but always taking time out to do another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast for the benefit of our listeners. Who have we got today?
Absolutely, mate. I love this. You've got Gemma and Lewis from G2 Developments on, and they're a really cool couple. I've met them a number of times. I always meet them when I come through to the Glasgow Scottish Property Podcast event. They're always in attendance. A couple in their mid-20s that have already built up a portfolio, £1 million, but doing it very sensibly, thinking about the future, thinking about the legacy, thinking about the not over leveraging. Like they've got their head screwed on, haven't they?
This is what I took from it. You know, it's so familiar that you meet people that are getting into property, especially at a young age. You know, the young ones getting involved. They want the cash now. They want to spend the money now. That's why they're getting into property, most of them. But Gemma and Lewis were very different. They're taking very much a long-term view in it, paying down the debt. Lewis talked a lot about, debt being the devil or debt being evil. Do you know what I mean? And that's a very dangerous approach to over leverage. So interesting, talking to them, their portfolio loan to value is sitting at where they're comfortable is like 50%, loan to value at the moment. For me, I've always been quite at risk and just taking the maximum I can get. Do you know what I mean? I don't know about you.
It's good, mate. Really, really nice chat. Such a nice couple as well, and they share a lot of their social media as well, and they're always contributing to the page and willing to help people as well. Sharing their journey. But it's a phenomenal growth that they've got in such a short period of time. I think they've only been going a couple of years, but they've already got 8 properties in their portfolio. But they buy decent quality stock, which I quite like as well. Like I don't like you see a lot of people that kind of come out and they want to buy the 39,995 properties because they yield good cash flow, but really these guys are looking to build, a portfolio for the quality assets that if they need to, they can exit and they can sell very quickly.
Great stuff. So let's just have a listen to Gemma and Lewis from G2 Developments. So I'm delighted to welcome Gemma and Lewis from G2 Developments on the Scottish Property Podcast. Thanks for being with us, guys. How are you today?
Thanks for having us. We're good. Yeah, we're chilling.
Just sitting in a new house. We've just finished refurbing our own project this time, so yeah.
Which somehow is so much harder than any BRRR doing your own house.
Whereabouts is that, guys? Whereabouts?
Newton Mearns.
Lovely. Yeah. Excellent.
But yeah,
just because the thought process you have to put into all the details rather than just make it a bit cookie cutter is that what the challenges were?
Honestly, the amount of things that I bought and then returned, it was ridiculous. It was like we had a huge sink that wouldn't even fit the bathroom, just everything down to things that would make sense to return. And then it's just like, oh, I don't like that color of paint. And then just weekends wasted.
Aye. And maybe a few more arguments along the way because you've got
a lot more than usual. Yeah, a lot more.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I was really looking forward to today's chat because I couldn't think of anything worse than to sort of do a property project with my wife. I think we'd end up just fighting all the time. So what is the secret to your success as a kind of property power couple then? From what we see on Instagram, you guys have done really well building up your buy-to-let portfolio. I tell you what, bring us right back to the start, Gemma, and let us know how did you guys even meet? Was it through property? No.
No. So I was a personal trainer in life, and one day, actually it's when Lewis bought his flat in the Merchant City, he just walked into the closest gym and basically looked for the closest personal trainer, and I basically jumped at the chance.
There you go.
So, that's how.
So Lewis, I've met you a couple of times previously before I met both of you together, and give us a little bit of background to yourself.
Yeah, so I think we met at the Property Hub networking events. So I'd been really interested in property for a very long time, and I think it was back in 2016 we'd started up a networking event, Property Hub, where we met. And that was just kind of like an informal kind of get together for property investors in Glasgow to kind of chat and meet about property. And yeah, so that's where we first met. I remember you'd just come back from holiday, I think, and you'd come in out with your tan and your clothes and stuff.
Tall tan teeth.
So yeah, ever since then I've been involved around the property circles. In that networking event, actually, I started my first business, which was a changeover, like an Airbnb changeover service, which we still have today. So we've got an office in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and I've got a business partner that kind of runs it with me. But yeah, so since then I've always been in the property scene, and the goal was always to get into property investing myself. But I needed obviously to make some money to do so.
And then when you guys met then, you know, like, and you started obviously dating and stuff, when did the conversations started popping up about property?
So I sold my flat to move in with Lewis in his fancy emergency flat. And it was kind of like trying to figure out what to do with the money. Obviously, Lewis, as soon as I said I was selling my flat, I'm sure he had wonderful plans for what we could do with that money. But there was a very interesting kind of negotiation process between me actually selling my flat and us using the money for investing. Because like my family, my dad used to invest, but my family are very risk averse. So
Right.
that's not the first thing that popped into my head. I was like, put this in an ISA or something. And we actually had like a whole contract written out that he'd written out, and we had many, many arguments about it. Because at one point I was like, "You're just trying to steal my money," and
I know. Well, that's it, isn't it? So you got like, you're obviously, you're a smart cookie, Gemma. You're like, wait a minute, warnings, alarm bells.
red flag. It was actually like maybe just before lockdown or around lockdown time, but either way, we kind of had a bit more time to think about it. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you guys formed a limited company then, have you? Like, and then that's how you're building your portfolio, Lewis. Do you want to...
Effectively,
Before we go on that, Lewis, I want to know if you actually paid for the PTs originally with Gemma.
He did.
I paid
yes.
for it. I found Muay Thai, and I was like, "Fuck it."
And then you became a man and you found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, didn't you?
That was the next.
Yes. Right, wait. Sorry, wait, I had to deviate there.
Yeah, so we formed the company. Effectively, I had some money from business as well. So Gemma put in a director's loan, I put in a director's loan, and we've started. I was a kind of starting pot to start investing. We started off with kind of buy or momentum investing, which I like to call it, but it's BRR. So you're buying something.
Ooh, that's fancy new term for it. What did you say there? Momentum.
Momentum investing. Yeah, I think it's a term coined maybe by Adam Lawrence. I like it better than the burrs.
Aye, that's good. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so buying keenly, you're adding value through some sort of refurb, and then you're refinancing at the higher value to release the equity you've built in through the refurb, and then going again. And that is momentum, because the more you do it, the more capital you have, the more income you have coming in, the faster your pot builds up. So that's what the kind of strategy we went with. And eventually
in Glasgow.
No.
In Glasgow.
Well, actually, our very first one was in Edinburgh, but that was
right.
purely by chance. The rest of them are all kind of around Glasgow, yeah.
So Edinburgh, Glasgow, Paisley, that's the kind of...
That's where your properties are, right? Okay.
We'll
and
go
then...
apart from Aberdeen.
You guys have missed a trick here.
And would you consider Aberdeen, or have you considered it? While we're
know.
on the subject.
I'm from Aberdeen, and my parents are both involved in oil, and it's like a total scary business.
Different world.
Oh, interesting, controversial.
No,
I think it's we'll obviously touch on it at the end, but now I'm in the auction business, we see a lot of people that maybe took finance out on a property when buying up in Aberdeen, back when it was at its peak, and now it's coming up to kind of refinance time, and they're getting massively downvalued, and their lending is just it doesn't even allow them to sell because they're negative equity. I think a lot of the stuff we get in Aberdeen is that kind of thing, and it kind of puts us off because it's such a cyclical market. Something you wouldn't really get down here in the Central Belt.
Stephen, you must have something to say on this.
Yeah, I think that's taught me a whole lot of lessons investing in Aberdeen as well, because you can see how people have over leveraged when the market's hot. Not spent the money on the maintenance and keeping their properties like good standard, and then they're stuck in between a rock and a hard place. They can't sell, they can't refinance, and now with interest rates going up, they're really going to be struggling. But Nick, we had the same thing, and we've spoken about it on both our kind of best and worst deals. 2008 was the exact same thing in the Central Belt. We're on another cycle. It just so happens that in the rest of the UK, we're at the peak and not the bottom where Aberdeen is. So I think everything cycle, but it has taught me quite a lot about not over leveraging your portfolio, and it's to be quite realistic with valuations and pay down debt as well as not just over leveraging to keep growing. So yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things in Aberdeen. We're seeing a lot of people that are trying to sell, as I said, and they can't. And it's one of those things, because a bank values it, doesn't mean that you can actually sell it for that amount. That's what you need to be careful as an investor. You need to be able to distinguish that.
As an exit.
You need to know your exit strategy, your exit options. And this is also why we like to buy good stock. You know what I mean by good stock? It's stuff that can be easily sold to a first-time buyer or someone looking to live there. It's a bit more liquid. So if, for example, something happens with buy-to-let, you have much more options as far as exiting the investments you have for good money. Because if you have really shitty, high-yielding stuff, who can you sell that to? You can only sell it to other investors, and they're going to be wanting to pay, pence in the pound for it.
And obviously, like you guys, I've seen, you're great on Instagram, social media, doing your stories and documenting your investing journey. So you had this kind of goal, didn't you, of getting to £1 million portfolio? So just let us know where you're at in terms of that just now.
So I think we reached about 900,000.
So this is like a property value, isn't it? So what does that equate to in terms of number of properties then?
So that's 8 properties.
That was 8, and that was not that we were downvaluing them, but it was the worst possible. Obviously, we got downvalued on a couple of them, but we knew what the real value would be. So we took the downvalue. Yeah, we took the most pessimistic view of it.
Effectively, it's
what kind of time period was that over then to reach that almost £1 million in portfolio value?
So that was from when we started. So when we started, it was just a goal of, right, we just need to leave X amount in each property. And then around 2021, we're like, right, let's try and get to £1 million portfolio by the end of 2022. It was a totally arbitrary figure because it doesn't mean anything.
It started in 2022 with 450.
Yeah.
Ish.
So you guys started in 20. Did you say 2020 or 2021?
2020. So
that's brilliant. That's awesome. So good. And like, tell us about how you found the kind of refinancing and all the rest of it. If you, out of those 8, like, have you, how much money would you say you've left in the deals?
We've tried to leave in around 10 grand, less than 10 grand when possible. But as the kind of market went on through COVID, it was obviously getting a lot more heated. So our kind of criteria was, whatever money we leave in the deal, we want to be getting it back out within X amount of years on a repayment mortgage. So we repay the debt on our mortgages. Again, like Stephen said, it's more just to respect the power of leverage and to kind of clean up after yourself. If you're just leveraging to the max, interest only, when times like these come around, you can really be stuck. But that was the goal. So get to £1 million portfolio, which just means the total asset value.
Yeah.
Is obviously 25% of that, but the money we've put into that we've left in is a lot less because of how BRR works.
Yeah. But that's phenomenal. That's like, what age are you guys? Gemma?
I'm 27 and Lewis is 25.
Lewis, I mean, just absolutely blows me away how you guys have done that. So talk to me about it. The good thing is there's a couple of things that I want to pick out there. So obviously paying back the debt, the repayment mortgages, that's something that you don't really find a lot of people going down that route, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So obviously, is that just your attitude to risk, or what was kind of like, have you both got other incomes, haven't you? So cash flow is obviously not critical to you to have that monthly income from the property. So do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so effectively I see debt as a very powerful tool that needs to be respected, and it can be very easy to just over leverage to the hilt. In the good times that's fine, but when it starts getting trickier, you can get stuck in that kind of situation. So our thinking behind it is, property is a great way to invest money. It's not necessarily an amazing way to make money. To invest in property, you need to make money somehow, and property isn't the best way of doing it. You can through property, but it's more trading through property. So that would be that's just a business. So that's flipping, sourcing deals. It can be anything like that. That's exchanging a service or a product for money. So our focus is on making money through different kind of avenues, and then investing that money smartly.
Yeah.
Property. to grow.
Gee, so half of our listeners have just switched off now. You've just told them that they can't make money out of property. No, I'm kidding. No,
Yeah, absolutely.
listen, I totally agree with you. Like, I very much sit like that long term as well. I don't do the repayment mortgages, but I certainly don't really use or rely on the monthly. You know, we're talking £200-300 a month, you know, cash flow from each buy to let. So it's not really something I rely on. It kind of just builds up in the company because I've got another business, obviously, that and you yourself, Gemma, you've got your own career as well. So you obviously don't rely on it.
No, it's not really our focus. But we did somewhat change our tactics. We used to put them on repayment mortgages, but now we put them on repayment mortgages by proxy. Like, we put them on an interest only, and then we bump up. We overpay. Yeah, we overpay.
Ah, right. Okay, got you. I wasn't really getting that. Right.
The first few were done through repayment mortgages, and I can't remember who it was who turned us onto this wee tip, but we basically put them on interest only mortgages and then bump them up to the repayment value just for that extra kind of safety in case we do need to.
So when you're thinking
at least the overpayment comes directly off the capital, doesn't it, as well?
Exactly.
So when you're thinking along these lines, then do you like? I mean, this is like so what I was not thinking about when I was 25 years old, by the way. But like, do you have that kind of long-term vision of having a set number of property, you know, a set number of assets that are debt-free, you know, at a certain age or something like that? Is this what's going through your head?
Not really. I think debt is very tax efficient. If you have a portfolio, let's say it's valued at £5 million and you don't have any debt on it, I would rather have a portfolio valued at £10 million with £5 million of debt on it, and because even in like capital and in capital gains terms and inheritance tax terms, not to get too much into it, but the tax you can offset through paying interest is very attractive. So you could benefit from £10 million worth of property, the income from that, and have it offset against the tax you pay on the interest, versus just having an unencumbered portfolio. And also helps, I think, when it comes to inheritance tax and stuff.
Yeah.
But what we kind of think about in property is we are very long term. Like, we are doing this for a legacy. This is something that we're building. We're building solid foundations for a very long time. We want to create that generational wealth, and that's all of our kind of the way we do things is all kind of linked to that.
Yeah, so we don't really have a number or anything. Obviously, you could say I want to have all the properties and all the money, but we don't. We have, like, what would you call it? Landmark numbers that we're going to stop and rethink. So when we get to 2 million, we're going to have a wee kind of rejig, see what we need to do, what we need to change our strategy. But no, there's no real number where we'd be, I don't know, happy or like.
Yeah, but in terms of like the loan term, then, like when you're paying down, it just depends whenever you put the lump sums in. Basically, that reduces the kind of term, does it?
What do you mean?
So you know how
just the loan to value on the portfolio. I mean,
it's just
ideally the loan to value we want to be at about 50%. Obviously, right now we can be slightly higher than that because we're at the start of our journey, hopefully.
Right.
But 50% is a good place to be, because you're still taking advantage of leverage for all its power. You're also not exposed or too exposed.
Exposed to any market conditions or market changes. Yeah, which is real sensible. Absolutely.
And when you're paying down the mortgage, like what you're saying, you're not on repayment mortgages. You're just paying in like lump sums or paying them down, whatever. Is that cash coming from the property then, the rental income?
So effectively, the way it works is you go on interest only, and then you just set up a separate standing order for whatever amount you want to overpay every month.
Right.
And that's from the rent,
Yes.
as you would with a repayment mortgage.
Yeah, we just factor in the numbers as if we're doing a repayment mortgage. And
that's very disciplined, I've got to say, because like it is tempting to obviously just spend the cash now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Surely.
I think it must be very tempting at your age as well, guys. We're seeing your friends probably jetting off on holidays or getting fancy cars, and going, is it quite hard to delay that gratification and just keep setting up that standing order to make sure you're overpaying on the mortgages each month?
I think that's something that Gemma's taught. Well, I've always been very delay gratification as much as you can. I think meeting Gemma, she's kind of taught me to live in the moment a bit more. Life is happening now; it's not happening in 10 years, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but
that's interesting.
So
yeah.
But we
That's
just don't have
interesting.
different priorities. So cars, like I said this in a property group chat the other day, I was like, in whatever 10 years when we're billionaires, if I have a fast car, if I have like a silly car, then feel free to call me a hypocrite, because I really don't care about cars. I care far more about like the fancy holidays, holidays, exploring. And we do set money aside for that. In fact, pretty much any money we've made over the last whatever 3 years is now either going towards our wedding or towards travel.
Yeah.
But it's like mainly goes
experiences.
back.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, we used to have a pot, like Starling Bank lets you set up these wee pots, and we had a pot that was named experiences, and a certain amount of the cream would be pulled off the top every month and go in there. But then we planned a wedding and that got obliterated. So
yeah, I mean, it's like each their own, isn't it? Like, Stephen, do you know what I mean? When I see your Instagrams of you driving away that Porsche and you racing Sam Dyer in his BMW and all that, I'm just like, what a pair of pricks. Do you know what I mean? Like, that just doesn't look exciting to me, but it's each to their own. You guys obviously get a kick off that. Do you know?
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
we're a bit more like you, Nick. You went off to Vietnam at Christmas. That's our vibe.
Although I wouldn't recommend Vietnam with 3 small children, let's be honest with you. Go there before you have babies, guys. Go there before you have kids.
That's one of the things. We're trying to fit in as many places. As you can probably tell, we plan out our lives pretty much to a T. So there's lots of things we want to do before kids. That's kind of our priority. So that's what we're doing this year. So we've got Japan and South Korea we're going to next month or month after. So there are things that we do that are not still.
I'll tell you a wee thing about the holiday. Like, so me and the wife, we love our traveling as well. We're like, right, this is going to be our thing every year at Christmas and New Year. We're going to go on this big trip, you know, like Thailand, you know, Indonesia, all these, Vietnam we went to, obviously. And then 3.5 weeks there with the 3 kids over Christmas, New Year. We came back, we're like, we're not going holiday again for at least a year. Do you know what I mean?
But you'll get to like August and you'll be like, I've got nothing planned, and you begin to feel like itchy feet. That's what I get. Like, I'm like, I cannot spend any money on holidays. And something inside me goes like, I need out.
I
know. No, don't get me wrong. It was fun. Moving on
we had a bit of that conversation similar when we went away in Cyprus in May, and then I took Maya away to the Portugal and says, I don't want to do these kind of package holidays type things. But we went to the jiu-jitsu camp in Portugal. Maya happily went to the kids camp every day forever. Me and my brother trained jiu-jitsu, chilled out by the region. I kind of came back to Kelly and I says, do you know when we wanted to go to Thailand next year? Nah, I'll quite happily stick with the package holidays while she's young and she's a bit of a handful, because the kids club were a dream.
Maybe that's okay.
The buffet breakfasts are always a winner with the kids. Guys, moving on to your, obviously, building up your portfolio and all that. And, you know, we were fortunate enough to get you along to actually show off one of your projects at the Scottish Property Podcast Glasgow networking event. And that was really great to see one of them in action and the numbers and the breakdown. And by the way, a huge thank you from myself and the community for you guys posting your in-depth breakdowns of all your refurb costs. I think it was Lewis posts these up sometimes, and they're really, really helpful to the listeners because you basically detail every little single thing of your total renovation budget. And I think that's really helpful. So a big thank you there. Tell us a little bit about working as a team, as a couple, and doing these like refurbs. At the start, did you get your hands dirty in the work, or have you always been just taking in the builder to do all the work?
The very first project we did, it wasn't illegally, but it was definitely at a point where you shouldn't have been traveling, but we were going to go and work on an empty flat. So we were kind of like, does that really count? So we did get really hands-on with that one, especially Lewis, you took on. I basically at that point, because I was still working, and I was also in that point of COVID where I was trying to get as many clients as possible because you didn't know if they were going to be there the next month, blah, blah, blah. So I was working, so Lewis ended up going over to Edinburgh a few times and doing a lot of the work. And I would just sit on B&Q at night and order things. And that was kind of the dynamic for a wee while, where Lewis would be the one who, met delivery vans or met trades, and we don't do a lot of the trades ourselves. Like basically, we painted our own house recently, and that was traumatic. But we took on the whole thing. We are now fully qualified painter and decorators, I will say. But then after a while, I started to get more and more involved as I kind of dropped personal training. And now I basically have that's my responsibility. And Lewis just kind of occasionally has to be pulled out to meet a delivery van or something like that. But in general, I have it all. He sometimes monitors the spreadsheet, but I have it all pretty much down now. So yeah.
What are your strengths, Lewis?
I don't have
everything else. Literally everything else. No, he does the finance. He does a lot of the budgeting, and he's so good at finding deals. Like his, I don't know, gut feeling is pretty much the driving force of.
Who deals with the builders when things go wrong? Because I enjoyed listening to your story, Gemma, where it was like this guy, and you know, basically you had a lot of things to say about him. Do you know what I mean? So give us a wee flavour of what you have to deal with sometimes. You want to just briefly explain that story?
That story was I was doing 2 client refurbs, 2 of our own rentals and our own house at the same time. So our guys were, like the guys that we normally use, were basically spread amongst them all and spread really thin. So some guy turned up and he knew Lewis from a past life. Like they knew each other from some, what was it?
Basically, it's a guy I'd known for a good few years. He'd moved recently to Glasgow, and he was a tradesman. So he did trades. He mainly did gardens, so landscaping. But he said he could do everything else,
and
which was one of our issues.
Yeah.
But effectively, when we do anything, we always work on a merit basis. So it's a meritocracy. Best man gets the job. I'm not going to give someone a job just because I know them, because that can cause issues.
Except for this one time.
But this one time we chose to right, we know the guy, give him a shot. He's here. He wants to make money for his family, kind of thing. Right, okay. Here it is, trust, and that get kind of.
Yeah, and it was very much.
It got abused. The trust got abused.
Very much, and not that I'm not. I wouldn't say that I'm easy to work with, because I think that you kind of have to be a little bit strict sometimes with tradesmen if you want to get things done properly. But I'm pretty easy-ozy normally with the guys that we work with. I trust their instinct. I trust their expertise over mine, honestly. So honestly, for a lot of the time with this guy, he would say things like, "Oh yeah, it'll be done in a week. Bathroom's going to be done tomorrow. This, that, the other." And I'd just be like, "Okay, well that tracks with every other experience I've ever had." And then it was the weekend before the valuation. The valuation had been booked in for a couple of months or something. It was kind of at that point where if we didn't get the valuation done on that day, we weren't going to then get the rate that we had applied for. And that was around when all that stuff happened with less trust and
interest rates were jumped up and all the rest of it.
To do it that day. We turned up that weekend. I turned up to do something stupid like paint some tiles or something really aesthetically unimportant. And we turned up and the kitchen wasn't in, the bathroom wasn't in. Like this is not to say that we weren't on site, but it was very much like oh yeah, my guys are going to come in and do this, my guys are going to come in and do that. And it maybe been a week that we hadn't been in and nothing was done. So I stayed that night until maybe like 8, 9 at night, and they were still working. They eventually got told that the police were coming because they were making noise, but I came down on them a bit tough. And then the next day they weren't done. But the toilet was where the toilet should be, and the kitchen sink was where the kitchen sink should be. So like for mortgage reasons, it was still a property, you know. And then for maybe 6-7 weeks after that, considering the job should have been around a 6-7 week job, for about 6-7 weeks after that, I was working with them super closely on every single snag that there was. And when I say that there wasn't a bit of the project that you hadn't effectively fucked up, that's so true. Like the paint was coming off the walls within a week of it being on the wall. The toilet wasn't connected. Like every single thing with water had water coming out of any random part of it. But he then had basically moved all of his tools into our next project because we had promised him the 2, really, because we needed to get them done back to back. They were our ones. They weren't for clients. I wasn't going to risk that at all. I used our normal guys on our house and our client project, so it was kind of our rentals. And he just kind of, I don't know, set up camp there. And at the time, because we were so busy, that was us down to 4 refurbs. They were like, that's fine, but remember all the things that you did last time. Let's not do that this time. He was like, yes, yes, yes. One of them that he did was he put down the flooring first, which obviously means that when you got tools and stuff, it all gets scratched, and like really flooring go down last. So I said, under no circumstances are you going to put down the flooring. He was like, yes, yes, understand. And then it's like 2 days later, I came to visit the flat and caught him putting down the flooring. And I was like, what is going on? So he got help, basically. There was also a massive issue, and Lewis sometimes agrees with this and sometimes doesn't agree with this, about how much he respected me because I was a woman.
Yeah, you did mention that as well. Now, just to cut, I mean, that does sound quite stressful. Where did all that end up? Like, did you let him finish off the project, or?
No, we didn't. So the first one that he did, we still occasionally get emails from the letting agent with things that need to be fixed, which is annoying. But the second one, we eventually just told him to drop tools and get out, and we got someone else in. We got our guys back in. So it ended up fine in the end, but it was really, like, when people talk about cowboy builders, I really didn't believe them until this point where honestly it was like we were speaking 2 different languages.
And these relationships can be difficult to manage because, you know, usually there's one side that feels like they've been done over. So obviously you're feeling it, then he's probably feeling it because he's probably asking for payment and all the rest of it. So
yeah.
Is that when Lewis steps in? Because he's kind of like the kind of
basically there's always 2 sides. Everyone's to blame in these situations. Problem was that we weren't on site enough. We weren't on site.
Lessons learned. Yeah.
But that's just because we're so busy. But you know, that's our fault as well. So it's just one of those things you learn and you move on.
Yeah.
To get a guy and paid him in full and sent him on his way because.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, we're always looking to see how we can learn from these experiences, and listeners will take something from that story as well, you know. You can't really just, I mean, you can trust, but I think it takes a lot to build up the trust, you know, like maybe 2, 3 projects after you've seen the guy's work. Do you know what I mean? You can maybe start relaxing a wee bit, you know.
I also would say if you do have someone that you have even an inkling that something's going wrong, getting them out is the easiest thing. Like there are more contractors. It's going to
try to cut ties sooner rather than later.
Instead of dragging it out, because that's what we felt that we did, partly because of like the personal connection when we're like, oh, let's you know, finish the job and that, but we really should have just been like, no.
And I say we learn from mistakes. I'm still making these mistakes. I'm like the worst for giving people second chances and all that. Do you know what I mean? Like
we do though. We want to believe the best in people, especially tradesmen. You want to believe that they say that they do what they're going to say they're going to do, but yeah, often they don't.
So when you get good ones, you're like, hold on to them.
So give us I mean, going on the positives now. So give us a good juicy one then that you've been really happy with, you know, out of your 8, what's been your kind of preferred, went really smoothly, ticked all the boxes. You're just like, that's a real good quality asset that I'm proud to have in my portfolio.
We got that one in Mount Florida that we showed at the Glasgow event. That was we managed to get it at, how much did we pay for it?
So home report was 120. We bought it for 103,750. It was just a 1 bed that we had to reconfigure. Spent about, can't remember, I think it was 11,000 on it. Got it revalued at 145, so that was a good one. But it's all of those kind of numbers. We want to be buying good quality stock.
Yeah.
Not afraid of 1 bedrooms. A lot of people kind of put off it, but I think you'll find now with how things are going, 1 bedrooms in smaller properties are definitely going to be more appealing to renters.
Yeah.
Does the good quality stock come to your kind of goals for legacy? Because I know it's something that I always think about when buying something. I always think this, you know, if I pass on and Maya doesn't use a letting agent, do I want her dealing with this type of scumbag that could be in this property? And it makes me second guess kind of properties going, nah, don't want that in the portfolio. Is that part of your decision process on what you add to the portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of those things like people starting out in property typically want to be buying stuff that gives them more cash flow because they want to be leaving their job faster.
Mm-hmm.
But once they've built up a few properties, they're like, there's a lot of issues with these properties. It's a lot more hassle. and I'm not getting the growth really. So I think once you've kind of got to a certain level, you sell that stuff and you buy less, better stuff, because it's a lot easier to hold longer term. I think the higher yielding stuff obviously gets you out of a job and can replace your income and stuff, but the natural progression is always buying better quality assets for anyone that's investing, I think.
Yeah. We see that certainly in the letting agency as well. So like we've got a huge spectrum of properties in all different locations and different profile tenants, you know, and we've got a couple that we took on a while ago that were like, you know, 30, 40 grand properties and pretty shit locations, to be honest with you. And you know, the problems are that the tenants maybe don't stay for long because there's like bad neighbours, antisocial behaviour, drugs problems in the area. So then you've got that void period, that turnaround, increased fees, all the rest of it. And then obviously, like, you know, there's, you know, tenants that don't treat the property very well. So there's higher maintenance repair costs. And yeah, it's like you say, you know, like it might look good in terms of, you know, your gross yield, but actually long term, when you're not actually benefiting from any capital growth as well, I think that's the secret, isn't it? They say that the money's made long term property from the capital growth. And if you're buying in these areas that you're not getting any capital growth, then, you know, there's not really much point. So I try and strike a bit of a balance, I've got to say. Like,
You need a balance for two, because you can't eat equity either. You need some
yeah.
cash. But for us, because again, property is there's so many ways of doing it, and so many different strategies and perspectives depending on what you want from it. But for us, like if you own something that's worth 50 grand, the jump for it to go to 100 grand is a much bigger jump than owning something that's maybe worth 150 going to 200. If you see it that way as a relative increase, I would rather own the asset worth 150 than fewer of them.
True. I mean, it's a thing that people probably need to think a bit more, rather than just think that shorter term. You know, having that cash flow, the capital appreciation, long term growth, and looking in certain areas that have got, you know, the opportunity. And like you say, you know, it leaves you in a position where if you need to sell, you can sell fast. I think that's really important.
It's a good price, because if you look at the value of properties based on yields, effectively, if you can only get, you know, £500 a month on a property, times that by 12, times that figure by 10, that's effectively what the property's worth to an investor. Now, the extra you pay is other factors. It's, you know, location, it's schools, all that kind of stuff. But if you look at it just based on yield, you need to be comfortable with what you're buying, that you can then sell that to someone else that's not just an investor.
And sort of, do you guys look at sort of round about the city as well in terms of, you know, branching out? Some people talk a lot about, you know, 3-bedroom houses and that, as long as they're kind of close by train stations where you can commute into the city and stuff like that. Have you ever looked at those kind of properties? Because they can sometimes be quite appealing as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of kind of maisonette style properties, Bargetti, Bayliston, that kind of way. Easily. Yeah, as much as we, like you say, it needs to be a balance. We've got lovely old tenement flats in the south side, and we also have these maisonettes, which are a bit better yield. Yeah, so it's a bit of a mix. So
okay, talk to us about the latest conditions then for investing in property then, because I know just from speaking to you in the past, you know, you were going full, you've been going at a fast pace, and then all of a sudden I feel from you is like, I don't know too much about it, but I hope you're going to explain, like things have kind of like changed, your kind of outlook, your approach has changed slightly. Do you want to just touch on that, Lewis?
Yeah, so our goal for 2023 was to get to 2 million portfolio value. So that would have looked like 10 properties, probably bought in part as a portfolio, and then a couple of single units. But with our circumstances, we want to focus on generating income first and foremost. So I think the investing has kind of taken a bit of a back foot, where we're not actively looking for deals as much. We're still looking, but we're not dedicating that much time to it. The time is being dedicated to trading business and creating income, so that we're in a position that we can invest more easily. I think that it's good that you starting out with nothing, because it kind of refines your investing system a lot, so that any pound you get, you can make into 4. So if you just focus on adding more pounds to the top of that funnel, then you can do a lot with that kind of system, and that's what we've kind of done. So this year is really about generating income through trading business that we can then use to invest how we want to invest.
Yeah, it has been a little bit of a switch from purely investing and purely building the portfolio. Not that we're taking this money really from interest only mortgages, that kind of, or from the rent, sorry, more from finding avenues outside of our portfolio and actually like outside of my career. So Lewis has gone into auctions with Prime, and yeah, it's just kind of just building up a pot to replenish our pot without looking for private investors. That's another way you can do it, is that we have a few private investors, but that whole kind of hunt for private investors is not something that's not something that doesn't interest us, because of course if you're a private investor and you want to invest, then hello, but
don't want to do yourself out of any opportunities here, guys.
But at the same time, that's just, we can put our energy elsewhere, really.
Yeah, you're not desperately going after this kind of money. Like you're obviously involved in your you can give your new business a plug here as well.
As the new interest rates caused that slowdown in the in building the portfolio as well, has that made you just kind of pause a little bit, or take the foot off the gas and focus on generating more income that you can leave into deals then?
Yeah, I think it made us rethink what we're doing, and it timed quite well with my involvement in the auction business. Again, just meeting new people, speaking to new people. It's more like, let's focus on making some more money to then invest, rather than trying to stretch the pound you have as much as you can. Just generate more pounds, and that's the thinking this year.
Yeah. In particular, I'm still focused on building the portfolio. So this says we're not that focused on finding deals, but we are still trying to find deals. It's kind of become a little bit more like Lewis is focusing on the auctions and bringing money in, and I'm working on spending it, which I'm quite
And tips on dealing with this current market. I mean, obviously, Lewis, you're heavily involved now with dealing with sellers and buyers through the auction company. Gemma, you're out still trying to find the deals as well, doing viewings and stuff like that. How have you been finding it? People I speak to a lot of people who are sitting in their hands just waiting for this, real dip in property prices and all that. So how are things looking at the moment? Let's just talk specifically in our area at the moment in Glasgow. I know we go a lot on Glasgow, but obviously because we know the market here at the moment, what are we seeing just now?
What I'm noticing is, for one, we've had to kind of tighten our criteria, partly because of the ADS jump and because of the interest rates, but we've had to tighten our criteria. At the same time, I think a lot of sellers are still not clocking on that, not that there's going to be this massive dip, there might not be, but they're not clocking on that these are factors why people are not going to pay over home reports. So for example, today I've offered on a few, and every single one has come back to me with saying, oh no, we're actually looking for it, and it's a number above home report for these like shiters, really, like bedroom.
That's a great term. I love that word.
They're not great.
Why are you wanting so much for your shiter? Like, what's the problem here? Like, so is this just a thing where it's going to take a while, Lewis, do you think, for things to filter through, that people are just going to need to reduce their expectations, or what's?
Well, there's always deals being done, and sellers, the best way for their expectations to adjust is time. So the more they're on the market, the less, the less their expectations are. And I think that through the auction business, we see a lot of sellers that are at the end point. So they've been on the market with an estate agent for X amount of time, and then nothing's happened. They've not had an offer. They've not even had interest. And they're like, right, what I can get for this property in my head is just reduced massively. And then they come to the auction. Not saying that they necessarily get a lot less than what they want, but it's more like that's a kind of, right, we need to do something about it because I need to sell it for X, Y, and Z reason. But yeah, it's just time. Time's always the thing. When there's less, it's definitely a buyer's market just now. The last couple of years has definitely been the opposite. It's been a seller's market. Now's a great time to be going out and doing deals. And if you're doing deals in the last couple of years, you should really be clearing up now.
Yeah. So, because you, and that one you were talking about Mount Florida, did you say you got that Underhome report in a seller's market? Was it?
Most of the stuff that we've got, I think all of it we've had under home report. Mount Florida was almost 20 grand. We've had Paisley was, home report was 90 and we got it for 65.5, something like that.
Aye.
So, there's always issues with these properties. It's not like it was a walking condition and we
Yeah,
got,
there was a reason why you managed to get it under that.
A problem, there's an opportunity. That is what we are as investors. We're problem solvers. We get paid for the bigger the problem we can solve, the more we get paid. That's our value. We take properties that have issues, we do something to them, and we benefit as the people solving those issues. But that's how we make the money.
Love that. Let's soundbite that clip. That's a good thing there. Gemma, tips for the listeners on how to negotiate. You know, have you got any ways that you just wait for things to sit in the market a little while and then go in there, or how do you do it?
Honestly, like for maybe half, maybe more than half of the ones we've got so far, or offers we've had accepted, because we've also dabbled in sourcing and we've dabbled in kind of deal brokerage as such. But the number one kind of tactic that we've used is to follow up. Like we have really good systems in place for following up. We have there might be some kind of work system geeks out there, but we use Trello, and Trello kind of tells us, oh, it's been 4 weeks since you spoke to the agent about this property, because you never know when a sale is going to fall through. You never know if it's just been sitting that tiny bit too long. They maybe laughed at your offer maybe 3-4 months ago, but now they're willing to actually bring you a counter. So for us, it's really been the follow-up that has been important, and it's just been getting on, like being that annoying person that's constantly in their emails or on the phone. And by that same logic, as cliched as it is, you do build relationships with agents. The other thing is, I think we used to be quite ballsy with how cheeky we would be with our offers, but we kind of adjusted that a wee bit, because I mean, at one point, I think everyone does it, where you offer like maybe half of what the home report is and then just see what they say, but a lot of the time doesn't really get you anywhere, I find anyway. I'm not sure if it's just like the female perspective. Lois will be here saying, no, offer 39999, but I find that it's better to come from a place that's semi-sensible.
And also, it's not just what the home report is, because the home report isn't massively a clear indication of the market value. You need to do your own research. You need to look at comparables yourself. Sometimes home report values can be way undervalued or way overvalued. So you need to know your numbers yourself. As an investor, it's up to you. It's your due diligence, effectively.
Great, and I'm looking forward to getting these cheeky offers into Lewis's auction properties when he sends them out on his mailing list.
Everything for under 40 grand.
Yeah. So, guys, this has been a great chat. Like, thank you so much for taking the time to, share a little bit about what you've been up to over the last couple of years, and it's been phenomenal, hugely successful. So, thanks again. And where can people reach out to you?
So our Instagram is G2 Developments.
And then for myself, so I've got an auctioneer page, so it's Lewis_property_auctioneer. And effectively through that page, we work with a lot of sourcers that maybe don't have buyers for deals that they have. What they can do is just refer the deals or the sellers they have to me, and we put it through the auction and sell it, and they get a commission out of it as well. So it's a good way to monetize all of the leads, and that's where I primarily speak to and communicate with people we work with. Yeah,
and then the G2 page is kind of our joint portfolio page, so it's more like not personal, but it is about us building our portfolio and all the.
When I'm messaging you on that, is it you I'm predominantly speaking to, Gemma, or is it both? A bit of both, right? Okay, right, because I never really know.
No, people say that all the time, and at one point we were going to make 2 different accounts, and we do have 2 different accounts now because of the auctions, but it's always good. There's always someone to answer.
Good stuff, guys, and thanks for supporting
us. Thanks very much for joining us, Guy. Really appreciate it. It's good to catch up with you every time I come through. The Glasgow event, you're always there.
Yeah, and we appreciate you posting your content on our group as well, and your breakdowns and stuff like that. So thanks for contributing there as well. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Okay, hope you enjoyed that interview, guys. I found it fun as always. Please share it on our social media, on your social media. You can tag us and take a picture, a screenshot on your Instagram, tag us, and we'll share it as well on ours.
And give the guys a tag on G2 Development's page as well, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share it on their social media.
Absolutely. As always, guys, get across to our networking events, first Wednesday of every month. Always great guest speakers, and you always meet some interesting people, I've got to say.
Absolutely. See you then, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.